Peace, guys. We come to you today from the UK branch of the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries in London, to be precise. My name's Levi Rogers.
And I'm Tamia Gopal.
And first and foremost, before we get into this lesson, we would like to state that we are the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. We do not affiliate with anybody that bears the name Israel. We are the leading authority on this book and on our traditions to do with this book. We are the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries under Elder Shadrach Porter, and this is the main thing that needs to be known, because we have a lot of people in this earth that try and bear the name Israel who are not really Israel. So, having said that,
we would like to go into today's Bible study, which is about courage. And the definition of courage that we found is the ability to do something that frightens you. So when we came across our lesson, we looked up stuff online about different types of courage, and we found that there's moral courage, emotional courage, physical courage, and spiritual courage. And a lot of the stories in the Bible that we came across, a lot of them faced spiritual courage.
Definitely.
Why do you think it's good to have courage as an Israelite?
Well, I'd say in today's terms, courage, especially as being an Israelite, is one of the most important things we need, especially someone that is a part of Rise and we're in, between the second and the third, or even the third and the fourth cycles of our life. Especially between the second and the third, we're in a time where temptation is trying to grapple us left, right, and center, and it's hard to I wouldn't say it's hard to stay on this track, but you're definitely going to be tested, and it takes a lot of courage to overcome a lot of the barriers and the mental blocks that will get in your way.
Definitely.
So I definitely would say, especially in today's time, courage is definitely needed.
I think also, like, as a teenager, when you're growing up, you're finding yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You're like, oh, my friends are going out. My friends are going out on a Friday. Like, we're all planning to go out on a Friday, but we need to understand that, like, this is Bible study. Like, would you rather be there for the Bible study, or would you be out being unprotected?
Definitely.
The God of Israel protects you when you're doing his works.
Definitely.
There's a lot of stuff when we were younger growing up that I would see as courage, because we both went to schools that were under, let's say, Church of England, and they tried to force us to do a lot of stuff, like go to church with them and do prayers and stuff. And when they were doing prayers and they're closing their eyes and stuff, I'm with my eyes open sitting up tall, because I know I'm an Israelite. Yeah. So I know that I'm going to go against all of that stuff.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it's a well-known fact. I know in the UK branch it definitely is, but I went to a Catholic school. And as I remember speaking to you about it, as we were coming here today, my courage was definitely tested every single day I was in that school. Yeah. I was there from the age of 11 and I left at the age of 17. And even at an age as young as 11, my courage is being tested. For example, as you said, you get a lot of the students or the teachers that will have what they call their mass, their little pagan services and whatnot. And they will always, because I go to the school, they will try and get me to take part in it. And me being an Israelite and being courageous, and I like to use the word hard-headed, even though I know it's a lot of negative connotations behind it. But as an Israelite, especially when you're going against the world, you need to be very hard-headed and have a good head on your shoulders, right?
That's true.
To have that quality that I had definitely helped me. Even got to the point where I'd clash with people in the higher ups in the school, like head teachers, head mistresses,
because they don't understand.
Would have to come in. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I was saying as well. Also on the way here, we were saying that it's ironic how Muslim people, when it's time for them to do Jummah prayer on a Friday, they get that space allowed to them. But if we came to them and we said, oh, I need to pray right now, they're not going to take us serious, because they don't understand our culture. Definitely. They don't understand who the Israelites are. Definitely. They might hear about Hebrew Israelites and this Israelite and that Israelite, but they don't know about the Israelite of the... I find
it weird, and the reason why I say that is because we both went to a Church of England school, so they call it,
and they want to teach religious studies, but they don't. They're reading stuff from the text, and they don't know about our religion.
Jesus.
How can you teach that?
They say that Jesus is the center of all their teachings, and they teach about how great of a man he was, and obviously us as Israelites understand how great our brother was. However, they need to know that I will go around the school say I'm an Israelite this, I'm an Israelite that, and the man you're teaching about is also an Israelite, and you have the audacity to sort of question me about what I do
and say he's a Christian.
Definitely.
And then this is when it all ties up to all the stuff that's pushed in our face. Also, we have Easter, we have Christmas, Halloween. It's when you're in school, it's forced on you. They force you to take part in this stuff, but you need to find the courage, you need to find the strength to just look past that. We know the stuff that we have, and during those times, it's the dark times. And when we come out of those dark times, we have Purim and we have Passover, and it's all stuff that we can celebrate.
Definitely. I think that's a very important point where we have, as you said, a lot of things pushed in our faces, especially from the media and stuff like that. And that is exactly where your courage will be tested, as you just said.
Definitely.
Your courage will have to come into play for you to stand up and say you're not keeping these things.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that stands out to me about courage, the ability to do something that frightens you, and bracket extreme bravery, right? To have courage is to technically go against the grain. Or every single Israelite has to go against the grain. We have to go against what is not normal in today's society. But obviously we know it's right.
Yeah.
But to have courage, you have to go against the grain. For example, as you said, all of this Christmas stuff, or in my school, they tried to force me to do certain things. And I was always going against the grain. I think my school had like 1,000 students. And I was that one student.
You're that one, and same, I was that one student. Exactly. Even when it comes to eating food, we was that one student. Okay, Jaden was a student as well, but that was in primary school. But yeah, like in schools, like, oh, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. Are you Muslim? But that's what they don't understand, because they always refer to Muslim if you don't eat pork. But because you don't know about us, you know that there's certain stuff that we don't eat. Even the same Christian that reads the Bible, that clearly sees what's clean and unclean, still eats unclean stuff. It's just, how can you say you read the Bible and you're not even following
it's their
it?
ignorance.
It's
exactly
ridiculous.
what it is. And I think this is exactly why we decided to give this lesson today. It may be basic, but it's such an important message. We are Rise, and we have loads of... Rise is a group where we have a lot of the young or younger, up-and-coming... We're all young and up-and-coming brethren or leaders, right?
Yeah.
And one thing every single leader on this earth has is courage. You have to have courage. I think even us as young people in society, we have to have courage. For example, when this whole corona virus is done, and I know for a fact there will be loads of different like parties and stuff like that, definitely. Social activities, right? Yeah. When these social activities go on, we have to know that if it does fall on a Sabbath or a new moon, we have to know that we have to show our courage and say, no, we're not doing it. We're not going out to do certain things because we know it's wrong, right? And I think it's so important to even have that
I was just gonna say, like, in regards to courage, like, do you feel that your courage would be tested more in today's society or back then when Moses and them lot was tested?
I'd say, I think that's a tricky question, and the reason that's why I say that is, back then I feel like it would have been easy to show courage, and the reason as to why I say that, and we'll go into the scriptures, we'll see people like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or King David, as you're going to go into, or even Abraham, right? All of these people had seen things from their grandparents. For example, they would have known of the Red Sea being split, so they would have known firsthand that the God of Israel done all these things, right? And I think even in today's terms for us, that's where faith comes into play, because now we need to have the belief that the God of Israel got us, and yes, we can't see him, but we do it in spirit. Do you understand? So I'd say it can be quite hard.
I guess, I hear what you're saying, but I think in today's society it could be harder because we aren't seeing these works. Like, we aren't seeing the water split into two. We're not seeing people be healed of leprosy. Like, it's for people like this in this day and age, they have to see something. Yeah, definitely. And it's just like, I don't know.
We must remember that
it is hard, but then that's why we have faith in the God of Israel. Exactly. And having faith is putting trust in something that you can't see. Yeah, if I'm correct.
That's exactly why the God of Israel chose us. There was always, and I always say this, there's always going to be a few traits that the God of Israel saw in every single one of us Israelites today, right? Yeah. And I know for a fact that courage would have been one of the main ones. Yeah. Every single Israelite has to have courage.
What about, like, in a sense of lack of courage? Like, how does that play a part on like an Israelite? I guess, like, when you have lack of courage, I personally think it boils down to lack of faith. Because if you're not putting your trust in the God of Israel, you wouldn't think, oh yeah, I know that I have the courage to do this thing. Yeah. And like, there's many people in the Bible that did have a lack of courage and didn't put trust in the God of Israel. Yeah. And they put trust in men. Yeah, it's true. And the God of Israel says, put not your trust in man. Put your trust in me. Yeah, it's true. And that's where they failed.
You know what I say we do? We go through these examples and see and point out the Israelites that had shown tremendous courage, right? So, if everybody in the chat would like to go and turn their Bibles to Daniel chapter 3, I'd hope that all my brethren knew that we'd go into the scripture considering we are talking about courage.
Courage.
But everybody, please turn to Daniel 3.
Yeah.
If you would read for me, that would be very much appreciated.
Chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set up in plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon.
Definitely. So, first verse, right? King Nebuchadnezzar, he was the king of Babylon, and now he's set up or made a golden image for, we'll read into it, but it's for the whole of the city or those that reside in the city to bow their knees down to, right? Verse 2, please.
Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the councillors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers in the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up.
So all of his higher ups, all the people that were in high places under the king, they all came to admire this one golden image, right?
Then the princes, the governors, and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the councillors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before that image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshippeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace.
Thank you very much. So they now put it into law that if you reside in this city, regardless of where you're from, regardless of whether you're an Israelite, you're a Babylonian, it doesn't matter where your lineage is from. If you reside in this city, it is law that you must now bow down to this golden image whenever you hear the music, right? And that kind of relates to, I don't know if many people have been to the Middle East, but when you go to them countries there, you know their time of prayer from when you hear music, right?
Yeah.
So it's this sort of similar thing there, and we sort of understand now why what they're doing is completely wrong, but it relates to what they've done in Babylon here, right? Verse 7, please.
Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up.
Everybody in that land done it. Every single person, despite the language, despite your nation, whenever they heard that sound, that was the instruction that everybody followed, except 3 Israelite men, but we'll get to that. Verse 8, please.
Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshippeth, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace.
If you can continue, one more verse.
There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the provinces of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy God, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
Thank you. So, as I said, the lesson is on courage. And I realized we forgot to actually mention the definition, which was to do something that frightens you. It's an extreme form of bravery. And I'm not saying that they were frightened to bow down to this God, but it was going against the king that would have frightened them. They pretty much broke the law of the land at that point, right?
Yeah, and can I just say that obviously back then, for you to go against the king's wish, that could get you put to death.
Definitely.
So this is showing courage, because they know that their God will deliver them. They know that regardless if they're gonna go against the king's wishes, they know that their God has their back. So for them to not bow down, that's them standing up for what they believe. And
this will go back to the discussion we had earlier. Do we think it's harder to have courage now in comparison to the times of old?
Yeah, we can definitely you wouldn't even think of say a teacher said to you, if you don't do your homework, you're gonna go into a fiery furnace like that. Yeah, that's gonna scare you. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna be scared.
But I think with this situation, they definitely looked on it like their forefathers had shown the same amount of courage, and they ended up being all right. They definitely made sure that they kept the first commandment, which was to worship no other God but the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's exactly what they went through to do. But we'll read on to that later on. Verse 13, please.
Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king.
So, sorry, I forgot to also mention that these Chaldeans that were spoken about in verse 8, I'm going to use a very, it's not a slang term, but a very modern term. They snitched. They told the king of these guys' actions, that they refused to worship their God and to bow down to their God. And because of that reason, as you've just read, King Nebuchadnezzar called for them 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to come before him, and he must have been very angry, but we'll also read on to that. Mm-hmm. Verse 14, please.
Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up?
So he's saying, have you just broken the law? Have you refused to bow down to the God that I made it a law to do so in this land? So keep going.
Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hand?
So this king now is trying to question our father's integrity, trying to question his strength and how much of a God he really is. He's just completely undermined the power of the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's questioned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and said,
who's going to save you now?
Exactly. Is this God that you've sacrificed your life for? Because the law was, if you refuse to bow down to this God, you will be put to death.
Yeah, exactly.
He's saying, is this God that you've sacrificed your life for the same God that you're going to... is this God that you sacrificed your life for going to now save you and deliver you out of this furnace?
Yeah.
Verse 16, if possible, please.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter.
So they don't care how it comes across, how the king feels. They're going to tell it how it is. Courage right there. Sorry.
It's all right. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king.
Thank you. So one thing that, and I don't know if you've realized this as well, but one thing I came across quite regularly when planning this lesson was that before any Israelite had to display their courage, they always magnified the God of Israel's name. They've done it right here. Which verse was that again, sorry?
That was
17.
If
it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. He will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. So he's made it known. He's made it known.
And the thing is, what the God of Israel always tells us is that when we need his help, to always call upon him. And that's what they're doing. They're calling upon our God to deliver them from being killed from this fiery furnace. And they already know, because they've already said to him, like, they're basically saying to him, I don't really care. You can do whatever you want. I know my God's going to deliver me. So do the worst that you can, basically.
I think the courage that these men showed was enough for them, because courage and faith go hand in hand, and in showing courage you will definitely show faith. And the faith that these men showed, it didn't make God, he didn't express it to the king that our God might deliver us out of the situation. He said our God will. It's the confidence they had in saying what they were saying. They knew that the outcome wasn't going to be negative on their behalf. They knew that they were going to be fine, and that's what courage and faith leads to. That's how you always feel if you have courage and faith in the God of Israel. Verse 18, please, if possible.
But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
So they've just made it known there. Regardless of what's going to happen to us, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And in no way am I going to compare myself to these men, because these men are great men. But it was the same sort of thing with me in school. Went to a Catholic school. Every single minute, every single day, as I said before, my faith and my courage was tested. They had, for example, we had mass, or not we, sorry, the school had mass. The school had mass every month, I believe. And I had to, that was a time where I had to stand up and say, I'm not doing it. Especially when I was young and I was new to the school, and these teachers are probably thinking, does this boy really know what he's talking about? Or is he just refusing? Is he just misbehaving? But no, that's not what the case was, because I continued to do it right up until I left the school, which was 6 years down the line. Got to the point where my parents had to go to meetings with these people because they were threatening to kick me out because of how hard-headed I was. And when I say hard-headed, I mean in the best possible way.
Yeah.
I had the utmost faith in the God of Israel, so I didn't mind. I was happy with the way I was. Thank God I was like that.
That was the same with my school as well, because my school was a Church of England school. So I think they went to the church maybe every semester. But I would tell them, I'm not going to the church. I'll stay at school, leave me with a teacher. And there was a lot of times where there would be conflicts, and they would be like, no, you have to come. But it's against my wishes. And at the end of the day, this is what I believe. I'm not going in the church. So they had to respect that.
It's true, because I think the way I look at it is, if a Christian came to an Israelite school, or if it was the other way around, these Christians are going to act the exact same way. But because we're in their school, they feel as if, no, we have to go by that. That was never the case.
And it's so funny, because it's like when the Muslim people are in the school, they allow them to dedicate their time for Jumu'ah prayer. Yeah. Like, they allow them a room so that they can pray. So why is it different for us?
Very true.
Because they don't understand our culture, and they don't understand our religion. They can't...
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, like they can't understand. They can't understand that this is something that we need to do as well. This is something that they need to respect for us. Because if they can respect the Muslim people and they can respect the Catholics and stuff, then they should be able to respect our wishes also.
Definitely. I think that relates perfectly to the first time. I remember this like it was yesterday. The very first time I told, and this was a religious education teacher. This teacher was responsible teaching me about.
I know how that felt.
They were responsible for teaching me about their religion and everybody else's. And I remember it was my neighbor, because me and my neighbors, we went to the same school. And my neighbors, I've been living with them near them for 10, 11 years. So they've known for a long time about my traditions and what we do. And I remember it was him that told my RE teacher that I'm an Israelite and I don't do certain things and whatnot. So I remember he brought me to the RE teacher and we spoke. And I told the RE teacher, yes, I'm an Israelite. And it's the confusion that was in their faces, and it's so funny, because I remember that day as well, the RE lesson that we had. They were in their Good News Bible consistently teaching about Jesus, who is our brother, he's a member of the Israel Nation Worldwide Ministries. He was an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. So you're teaching about my people, but you don't know who I am.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
It's ridiculous. And it's so textbook of them, because they're reading from a textbook. They don't even understand half the stuff they're teaching.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's just, why are you so confused? Like, if you're teaching about religious education, you should know every religion to educate people on.
Definitely. And they obviously didn't know.
And
they don't know the main religion, the only religion, which is the funniest thing. Sorry, verse 18, please. So I think we read that, but just to go back over.
But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
So yeah, they made it known that they refused to do anything that's even in the law of their land, right?
Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated.
So that verse,
that's just crazy.
I can't imagine the mood switch he must have had, because at first, if you realize the mood he must have been when he was questioning the power of our God. I can imagine he was probably walking around. Like, he's not curious, but he's being what's the word? Sarcastic.
Yeah.
He
like,
doesn't really care.
I guess like, will your God save you now?
Yeah, exactly, blah. That sort of thing.
And then now he's angry because they're talking back to him, so he wants to make it 7 times hotter.
Yeah, exactly, 7 times hotter than anybody that he'd made it from before.
Put in there, because he's angry. He's angry that someone's questioning him and someone's not going by the laws that he set down. This
verse, I'd say, is quite key, and the reason why I say that is because it relates back to the times of Moses, when God hardened Pharaoh's heart to show his might. In this situation, God made the furnace 7 times hotter. Nebuchadnezzar made the furnace 7 times hotter than he had made for anybody else, right? And in doing so, he's going to show his might. He's going to show that you can make it as hot as possible, or as hot as you want. But so long I'm with my people, God being with his people, nothing's gonna stop our God from being victorious and mighty.
Verse 20.
Yes, please.
And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace.
Yeah.
Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
How ironic is that? I just want to say, how ironic is that it took out the men that took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to the fire, but it didn't touch them.
Didn't touch them. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in the haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king.
Sorry, just to quickly cut you off there. That's another. He's shocked. He's shocked. The king he's a mighty man in this land, right? And he generally thought that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wasn't going to be with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But it says here that he rose up in haste, which means I know when I rise up in haste, or if I have to rise up quickly, it's because I'm angry. Angry at something that my brothers may have done. But similar sort of thing here, the same sort of emotion. He's angry that not only has he come across as very cocky and sarcastic at first, he's then gotten angry with their responses, and now they're being proven correct. Do you know what I mean?
And he's seen the power of our God as well.
Definitely.
Because he's seen that his men that he sent into the fire, like even furthermore, even to question that, like the fact you even sent your men into the fire.
Yeah.
Like why would you even do that? I don't understand that. But you sent your men into the fire and you've seen them burn, but you're seeing the three Israelites standing there. You're even seeing a fourth person with them.
So it's like it's sort of that he sent his men to deliver Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to the fiery furnace, and instead of instead of the fire touching Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who the punishment was intended for, it slew the other three men, right, or the other group of men that took these men. But this is the first sign of the God of Israel showing his might, and this was all due to the fact that these three Israelite men showed tremendous courage. They did not lack courage at all, right? So if you can keep going.
Verse 25. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. So
now he's realized he's sent 3, he's seen 4. One being a spirit to protect Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Just to show his might, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, you can keep going. Verse 27.
I think I was still on 26.
Go on.
I'll read 26 again. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair on their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of the fire had passed on them.
Do you know how significant that is? That they weren't even touched. They went in one way, they came out the same way.
Same way. Not even a hair on their head was affected.
Their clothes, which is probably the weakest material on their body, usually your clothes would burn first. Wasn't touched.
You'd smell the fire on them from them even going in, or even being near the fire. You'd smell the fire on them, and not even a single scent.
And then this just shows exactly why the God of Israel said what he said in Deuteronomy 31 verse 6, when he said he will not fail us. He will not fail thee. He didn't fail Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in this situation. And that's exactly why we should have good courage, because if we do have good courage and match that with just as much faith, why do we need to worry? These men didn't worry. We just definitely don't need to worry. Verse 28, please.
Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own.
Look at that. So the original decree was, but when the music plays, bow down, worship the God that I have set upon you, a golden image. These 3 men refused to do it, stood by their beliefs, kept the commandments, showed great courage, integrity, faith, and strength. Now the king's now backtracking on his word. That's such an that's such a key thing in itself. Even, for example, do you know in the police right now in the UK, and because I've got a colleague that's a police officer, and what they say is because they're looked up as role models or public servants or anything, so anybody of a high status. Even, I don't know if you watch Good Morning Britain, right?
Sometimes.
But there's our health secretary. There was a motion in the parliament, which was. Do you remember when the whole free school meals thing was happening? And, and there was some MPs that were for having free school meals and some were against it. So the health secretary was against. He voted against it at the time. And then there's a a presenter called Piers Morgan, and he was questioning him consistently, saying, "Oh, so because obviously the free school meals thing is now happening. Everybody's getting free school meals during these times." And he kept questioning him, saying, "So do you regret it? Once you regret something, you admit defeat. Police do the same thing. They can never say that they were in the wrong because that means they've admitted defeat." The reason why I mentioned all of that is because over here, the king had turned around and said that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. So he's now just backtracked on his word, on his first decree. His first decree was you must worship the God that he set before you. But now in this situation, he's now taken his word back, and now we're all allowed, or Israel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are now allowed to worship their God without any problems.
And also, back then, when a decree was made, it was hard to go back on a decree.
Yeah, definitely.
That's like set in stone.
Definitely.
So for him to say that, he knows that he's seen the powers of our God, and he can't question them anymore. He knows that he can't go against what he's seen, because what he's seen is something that's basically a miracle. He's basically seen the works of our God, and he knows now that he can't question them.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
he will allow them to serve whoever they want to serve.
Definitely, I think. Yeah. And I know I've kind of gone back on this story a few times today, but I mean they match each other so perfectly, right? Even in the story of Esther, the King Ahasuerus couldn't fully go back on his decree. Yeah. Instead, what he did is made a new decree saying that the children of Israel are allowed to now fight for their beliefs. Yeah. So if he couldn't go back fully on his decree, but this king did and said that they can worship their own God, or that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego can worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that just shows how much of might the God of Israel showed. Yeah. And all that might that the God of Israel showed was purely because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego showed tremendous courage and faith, right? Verse 29.
29. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort.
There you go. His job was to show his might. He done exactly that. No other God that can deliver this sort. Yep. No other God can do what the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob done. Not even the God that he created. He's basically undermining his God, his traditions, and
his golden idol.
Everything that he done to everything that his God, or his God with small g, stands by. He just undermined everything purely because he's seen the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's might, and thank God for that.
It's just so funny because like you can see in the sense that he's afraid, because he's saying that anyone who goes against their God, that he will act accordingly. Yeah. Like, that's not even his God, but he will act accordingly because he knows what this God can do.
Definitely.
Even that alone is a big statement.
And I think that was the end of that scripture, and I hope that the message of having good courage and having strong courage got to you in that scripture. But I think it's so important, as I said, especially for us youths, going through the second and third, and even the third into the fourth, as you said. Yeah. This is the most tempting, it's definitely the hardest time, especially in the climate we live in now. There might be a time, God forbid, when this whole COVID thing is over and our friends are calling us to go out on a party, but yes, it's a Sabbath day. Are we going to do it? Those of good courage, those of good faith, we're going to stand against it and say no, because this is our truth. This is everything that we've done. Even King David, he was the youngest. He was a very young child, right? Yeah. Physically, he had nothing.
He was little. Yeah. He was a shepherd.
Yeah.
I doubt he had muscles. Like, we don't know. He was a little kid. Yeah. And David is another person who showed a lot of courage.
Definitely.
And we're gonna turn to David. So we'll go to 1 Samuel chapter 17.
I think a very important thing to mention is how when we were doing our research for this lesson, we came across the fact that there were 7 different types of courage.
Yeah.
There was physical, I'll name a few: physical, spiritual, emotional,
and moral.
And those are the main ones that pertain to this book. But there were other ones, right? And I think an important point to pick out is the fact that David, in comparison to Goliath, because I researched this reading this another time, Goliath in today's terms would be 9'6", and I don't know what the tallest man on this earth is, but
I don't think he's that tall.
I know he's not that tall, and that's ridiculous. And I can imagine David, as you said, he was a little kid.
Yeah.
He had physically had all the odds against him, but that one thing that he had that Goliath never had was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
And he had courage and faith in the fact that he was going to.
And you know, with David also, he's seen his God's works. His God's delivered him many times before, so he knows what his God can do for him.
Yep, definitely.
So something like Goliath isn't anything near, like, it's not nothing that's going to scare him.
Yep,
because he knows that once he calls upon his God's going to be right by his side.
Definitely, and I think this is a prime example as well of why it's so good to have courage. Mm-hmm. You have courage, I'm telling you, the odds are not against you. Once you have courage and have faith in the God of Israel, the odds are stacked with you. And I'm pretty confident you'll be successful in doing what you want to do, as we'll go into the scripture and see. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to read for you?
Yeah, go on.
First one?
Yes, please.
Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shoko, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shoko and Azekah in Ephraim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines.
So, at the beginning of the verse, we're talking about David's people being in battle with the Philistines, and their armies are gathered together, mm-hmm. and there's a lot of them, and Israel. I'm guessing Israel was quite. To them, maybe they were quite small. They were quite afraid.
I think it will go into the numbers.
Yeah.
But I can definitely make a very calculated assumption that Israel would have been smaller in number. Deuteronomy 7:7 says that God chose us because we were few in number. The God of Israel is never going to have us physically in more number than the enemy, so that he can show his might.
To show his might. Yeah, exactly.
Show his might. It's the same as us now. As a nation, once we believe in the truth, we're nowhere near the big. I don't even think we make up 0.1% of the world's population, but we definitely have spiritual strength over any other nation on this earth. So I think it's the same sort of thing over here. And
I think even in regards to us being so small in number, I feel like sometimes that does play in effect to people don't know how to say it, like not understanding us, but like because we're so small, like when you see the churches, it's a big church. Mm-hmm. There's loads of people. Mm-hmm. Everyone's rejoicing. Everyone's like happy, filled with Jesus and all of that stuff. And it's just like, well, we're a small nation. We're focusing on the stuff that talk about our people. We're not focusing on the stuff that talk about other stuff. And like we're educating ourselves on our people, and we're talking about everything that's real in the Bible. Yep. And we're talking about real things happening. We're talking about people like David being courageous and fighting against Goliath. Things that are inevitable. Like you wouldn't imagine going next to a bus and trying to beat up the bus. Like the bus is like so tall. Like, you know, it's a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Read on from verse 3.
And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. So split, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So as far as I'm concerned, when I researched it, it's 9'6". Yeah. I don't know how tall the tallest man is. The tallest man that I probably know, I'm not too sure. But as far as I'm concerned, Shaquille O'Neal was like 6'11" or something like that. So if you want to do the math yourself, do it. But that's a joke.
Literally.
Right? Verse 5, right? Mm-hmm. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass.
Can I just say, like, I find it ironic that a guy of that stature is wearing a helmet and he's wearing armor. Like, you already know the difference, like, of strength that you have against the people that... Yeah,
and brass is...
You know?
Brass is one of the strongest metals out there. It's very hard to melt brass, or it's very hard to break through brass. And he's so geared up and suited up. I don't understand why, and it's amazing to, when you read the scripture, see what David has actually done to even get through all of this shield, right? What verse was that? 5? 6?
6.
And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said, Why are ye come out to set your battles in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me.
So basically what he's saying is, I'm a Philistine, and you guys are people of Saul, and I want you to pick one person to come and fight me.
Yep.
Like, give me your strongest men so I can basically defeat them, because he's seeing all of our people as weak.
Yeah.
When in fact we're stronger than we think. But that's where courage comes in.
Definitely.
Because when you have courage, you know that you have the bravery to even take on Goliath. You know, and as we continue to read, we'll see why.
Definitely. What verse am I? 10?
Verse 9.
If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together.
Just exactly like what I've said, basically. Give me a man that I can fight. But if I lose, then we'll be servants unto Israel. We'll be serving you. But if you guys lose, then you guys will serve us.
When Saul and all Israel, verse 11, heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. I'd say that's they had a lack of courage.
Lack of courage. Imagine someone say, like, you because they're so afraid, they're not even taking into account their God. Like, they're seeing it as this guy saying that he wants to kill us, basically. It's just the amount of thoughts that will be running through your head, like, as any person.
I think when we go into the story, we'll see, but this young man, David, really put the elder members to shame.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because these Israelites saw all the greatness that happened before them. No way now are we going to see the Red Sea split in half. No way now are we going to see Moses or a man put a rod on the floor and turn it to a serpent and whatnot. Do you understand?
Yeah, exactly.
They saw all these things, or they knew of it because it wasn't far from them. They would have known their grandfathers would have told them these stories.
Exactly.
But they still feared. They still feared
that they were going to be killed.
Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly why we say they had a lack of courage. We don't know why. They had the God of Israel with them, but they had a massive lack of courage. Verse 12. Okay. Now David was the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and the next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul.
So what it's saying in these 3 verses is that they've 3 of the eldest sons have gone on to go into battle to fight Goliath, and David has he followed on?
Yep.
David's followed on also, but David's not seen as he's going into battle. David's just following on.
Yep.
Let's say for now. His brothers are older. They're probably more stronger. They probably have more experience. Yeah, they were soldiers.
He wasn't a soldier.
And he wasn't a soldier.
Verse 15. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, presented himself 40 days. So he was eager to fight the Israelites, whoever the Israelites were going to put forward, right? And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren of Ephah of this parched corn of these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren. So Jesse told David to go and
to go feed,
go give the food to the soldiers, right?
Yeah.
And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how they thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench, and the Most High was going forth to the light, and shouted for battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army.
So currently they're just fighting each other right now. David is doing what he's doing. He's a shepherd. He's herding his sheep. He's just doing what he usually does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Verse 22, and David left his carriage in the hands of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. Young boy running into the height of battle. Verse 23, and he talked with them. Behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I'm just saying. So now Goliath is talking, obviously the same talk that he was talking before, but now David is hearing it.
Yep.
And I imagine that David's probably thinking like, what is this guy talking about? How is he talking about my people like that, making them feel like they're scared? Like Levi said, they know of the works that our God has done prior to all of this happening. Yeah. They know that our God can deliver us. So David's probably thinking in his head like, why fear? Like, come on, like.
The question is why? Yeah, why fear?
You know, why fear?
Definitely why fear. What verse 26? 20. I'll go from 25. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? From who is this uncircumcised Philistine that from Israel? And I'll repeat that. Yes, for which shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
So he's saying, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? We know that all the children of God are circumcised. Yeah. And we're letting this guy try to boss us around, basically.
Yeah, I think in this situation he's making a fool out of him. I think David's mocking Goliath in this situation 100%.
Yeah, he's definitely mocking Goliath.
David obviously was an Israelite, and all he's known is to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. And one of the things that as an Israelite you must do is circumcise. So to say who is this uncircumcised Israelite? Israelite. Who is this uncircumcised? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?
He's speaking to his brethren. He's speaking to his brethren. Like, why are you guys letting this guy like take over us? He's making
a fool out of Goliath. He's making a fool out of Goliath.
Verse 27.
All right, cool. And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why comest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and thy naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle.
So he's basically like his older brother's angry with him. Yeah. Like you're my little brother. Like imagine. I can't say Elijah because Elijah's only 3 months old. But imagine Elisha coming to battle and we're all there, and he's speaking to all the soldiers saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, 100%.
Like, come on, guys.
The way I look at it is, if I was ever in a fight outside, right, and my brother,
and you saw Manasseh,
he's 8 years old, tried to come and help me fight. There's no way There's no way I'm allowing that to happen. It's pride. Obviously, I'm gonna have pride. I'm the older brother. My job is to protect my younger brothers. But there's no way he's taking part. And that's exactly what Elijah was thinking here. There's no way, David, you're going to come and help us fight this battle.
And he's saying, where are the sheep? Like, who have you left the sheep with? Yeah, that's your job. You're supposed to be looking after the sheep. Like, why are you down at the battle?
But had all the children of Israel had the courage to fight Goliath and the Philistines, David would have had no need to come down here and help, or try and help out.
Verse 29.
And David said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? So he's questioning what he's done. And that's exactly something that Manasseh would do as well.
Yeah, he's saying what has he done wrong? Because he feels like it's right that he needs to address this. He needs to let them know. Like he needs to give them the encouragement. Yeah, he's showing up the elder people. He's showing up Eliab and his older brothers. Yeah, that's exactly what I said before. He's showing them up. But I do understand and engage where Eliab was coming from. But David was 100% in the right. Yeah. Verse 30, and he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servants will go and fight this Philistine. And go on. Oh no, David's just saying to Saul, like, don't, like, why are they why are they having not less faith? How do you say it?
Why are they lacking courage?
Yeah, why are they lacking courage to fight?
Why are they lacking faith?
Yeah, why are they lacking faith also? He knows that he can fight. He knows that his people can fight, and that's why David spoke to the people, and someone obviously got wind of that and wanted to relay that to Saul.
Yeah.
Because maybe Saul needs that encouragement as well.
Yeah.
He needs to know that his people are going to be able to fight this Philistine.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go for verse 32, right? And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servants will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. That's exactly what I say to my little brother. If ever he tried to fight, I tell him, go, you're still young. I don't want you to get involved. That's exactly what King Saul said to David.
Even King Saul is having doubt.
Yeah.
He's saying, like, you're just a little child. Like, I don't know if he'll feel comfortable sending a little child out for war. He's feeling scared. Like, he's probably thinking, what is this little child talking about? He's crazy. All of that stuff.
Yeah, he's just saying he's a youth and whatnot. So he has no
business.
That's exactly what I was saying. He has no business here. No business trying to get involved in fighting. Verse 34. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered out of his youth. Out of his mouth. Well, out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard. I smote him and slew him. And the servant slew both the lion and the bear. And the uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God.
He's basically referring to the many times that God has watched over him. Like there was a lion and a bear, and he slew them both.
Both.
He slew them both.
Exactly
He's just basically saying like if I can do that, I know I can kill this uncircumcised Philistine, and he's emphasizing the uncircumcised Philistine because he knows that his people are all circumcised.
Yeah.
He knows that he knows that
the power of being circumcised.
He knows the power of
God's covenant.
Exactly. That's exactly that. Verse 37.
David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. So now they've finally put faith in David, right?
Yep.
And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head, and also he armed him with the coat of mail. And David girded his sword up with his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him.
So I'm guessing him not proving them means that it's not fitting him right. That's my understanding. Or I'm guessing maybe he's not used to wearing it, so it might be uncomfortable to him.
It could have even been that he felt he didn't need it.
Yeah,
he had the God of Israel with him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, he did have the God of Israel.
It could be either of them. Verse 40. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and a man bare the shield went before him. And the Philistine looked about and saw David. He disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy and of a fair countenance. So
Goliath is looking at David and thinking, "Oh, this is light work, basically."
Yeah.
Like, why are they sending this little child to me?
Yeah, he's undermining the courage he's about to go through. Yeah. Verse 44. Verse 43. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with stave? And the Philistines cursed David by his gods. And the Philistines said to David, come to me, and I'll give thy flesh unto fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. The courage and the confidence he had there, honestly. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Even him saying that refers to you, like when you was talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They magnified their Lord before they were challenged with before they were put in this situation. Yeah. Before they done what they needed to do, they always magnified the God of Israel. Exactly. And he's saying to Goliath, you're coming to me with a sword
with armor, and I'm coming to you with some stones.
Yeah.
Like he's probably thinking.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
Like, are you rude? He's probably thinking, this little child, who's he talking to?
Even now, if I see someone with a sword, I know they have the intention to kill me. If I see
saw
someone with a
sword, I'm getting a sword.
Exactly.
But that's because, like,
a sword is associated to killing.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
A stone is not associated to killing anybody.
You wouldn't think to pick up stones and think,
Never.
this is how I'm going to defeat this 9-foot giant.
Yeah, exactly. No. Exactly. Verse 47. After all this assembly,
verse 46.
This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth. All the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. So
David is playing off with the words that he said, because the Philistines said to him, I'm going to feed you to the fowls of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounded funny. Yeah, he said, I'm going to feed you to the fowls of the air. So David is saying back to him, I'm going to make sure that the fowls are feeding on you, on your carcass, or once I've taken off your head, basically.
Yeah.
You know, making him feel scared. But he probably still doesn't feel scared because he's seen a little child.
Yeah. It reminds me of, like, for example, when you have fights with your little brother and they just start trying to cuss you out and that sort of thing. That's how it just seems like that. Even though David was way more successful than my little brother would be if he was to try and find me. That's the sort of thing he's doing, right?
Yeah.
Verse 47.
Yeah.
And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. That's exactly courage right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to pass, when the Philistines arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran towards the army to meet the Philistines. So it's as if he was like...
He wasn't even scared. Like, he wasn't scared to go to the Philistine. Like, why didn't the Philistine come to him?
Yeah.
Like, it's very questionable.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't scared. He knew that he was probably running to him like this.
Yeah, he was.
You know?
Verse 49. And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it and smote the Philistine in the forehead. And the stone sunk into the forehead and he fell upon the face of the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David.
Imagine seeing a 9-foot person fall.
It goes back to your point. Do you remember you were saying how, first of all, David had no physical aspects to even compete with Goliath. He was a small little boy. Goliath guy was, in today's terms, 9 foot something, right?
Mm.
That's one. 2, Goliath had all the armor needed to go to battle. He had a sword. He was going to use a sword to fight a child. David took a stone and a slingshot, right? And that just shows the power that God is on. 3. There was a point I wanted to make as well in regards to when it was describing the armor that was on Goliath's head, and it said it was made out of brass and whatnot, and I described that brass is one of the hardest metals to even get through. Yet this stone
went through.
It went right through. It just missed the whole armor and hit him right where it was meant to hit him.
Mm.
It shows the power of the God of Israel. When you have courage, I'm telling you, you have nothing to worry about. Fear doesn't even need to be in your heart.
Thoughts. Yeah.
Not even in your thoughts. You have no need to worry when you have courage in the God of Israel, when you have faith in the God of Israel, even as much as David had here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Verse 50, right? 51. Therefore David ran and stood up the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. So that was like their sort of, how do we describe it? That was their main man.
Yeah.
Once their main man, who they thought wouldn't be destroyed,
exactly,
was destroyed, they have nothing to stand by.
They knew the works. They knew that they probably knew that it was impossible to kill Goliath.
Yeah.
So now that they've seen that someone's killed Goliath, they're nothing.
You know what I say?
They can't fight now.
I say they just hid behind him. That's exactly what they done. As soon as he was gone, done away with.
And I feel like in regards to hiding behind something, I feel like that's what a lot of people do in today's day and age. They say that they read the Bible, but they don't read the Bible. They're hiding behind certain scriptures in the Bible,
and
making that comfortable to them. But it's not Like, you're not...
Yeah, one scripture you can definitely pull out that they use is John 3:16.
And the thing is, they can pull out a scripture in a whole chapter that doesn't even relate to the chapter, but it's what makes them feel comfortable.
Or they'll pull out that one scripture and then the verse after, it will just...
It's just contradictory.
It will just contradict what they believe or what they've made of that scripture, right?
Yeah.
Verse 52, and the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistine fell down by the way to Sharaim, even unto Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth and against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell you. And the king said, inquire, thou whose son the stripling is. And go on.
Oh no, it's just like now Saul has seen what David has done. Like he's amazed. Like I guess they need to see consistent works of God for them to continue having faith.
Yeah.
And Saul's amazed, and he wants to find out who David's dad is, like who the strong boy, like, you know, he took down Goliath, who his dad is, like they wanna.
Yeah. Verse 57, and as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, whose son art thou, thy young man? And David answered, I am the son of the servant Jesse and Bethlehemite. So, another example of what courage does to you. As I said before, if you have courage, you have no need to fear. Fear doesn't need to be in your vocabulary, doesn't need to be in your heart, in your thoughts. Just have courage and faith in the God of Israel, and good things will always come your way. You have no need to worry.
Mm-hmm. And David had courage all throughout. Same as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He knew of his God's works. He knew that his people shouldn't have been afraid.
Yep.
He knew that regardless of any situation we're in, when we call upon our God will be there for us. And he will help to deliver us
100%.
from whatever situation we're in.
That same verse or scripture that I've mentioned a few times in this lesson, Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. That same verse, or the way it's worded, is repeated throughout the scriptures in Proverbs, it's in Joshua. And that's just a reiteration of the God of Israel telling us, you don't need anybody else. You've got me. Mm-hmm. As soon as you realize that you have the God of Israel by your side, there's no way you will lose. You have no chance of losing. You will definitely come out victorious, right? Mm-hmm. Even before, we were talking about, just to shift the conversation a bit, we were talking about there being different sorts of courage, different types of courage. We mentioned there was mental, physical, spiritual. And I think one of the main scriptures to show an example of what is emotional courage is Genesis 22, where God instructed Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Obviously, I'm sure all my brethren in the chat room know the story and understand that never happened, but it was the intentions and the principle that Abraham had when going to carry it out that the God of Israel said yes and ticked the box of why he is why he will be a worthy servant of his, right? So if you guys could also turn your Bible to Genesis 22 from verse 1, I'll read to verse 15, and we'll get that cracking. Can you read for me, please?
Yeah, when I find it. 22, 1 to 15, yeah?
Yes, please. Start with verse 1.
Verse 1, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here I am.
So, sorry, quickly, tempt. This whole thing was a test. It was to test Abraham's integrity, his strength, his emotional strength, it would be, his courage and his faith in the God of Israel, right?
And what does Uncle Davros say? Every single day we face temptation, we fight back.
Exactly. Big up my dad.
Verse 2, and he said, take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him.
Thank you. So, those in the chat room, those viewing, there's one thing I'd like to ask you guys to do when we go through this story is just to humanize this story, right? Think of it as you were Abraham and God told you to do this to your son or your daughter, right? Think about the emotional connection a child has with their parent. Just humanize the story, right? In this verse, God told him to go up the mountain which I will tell thee of, and Abraham rose up early in the morning. So it says that he went up immediately and done what he was supposed to do. However, when we humanize it and paint the picture, we realize that Abraham, obviously being a human, his mental would have been going all over the place. His thoughts would have been all over the place, and his emotions would have been all over the place. I can imagine he must have had tears in his eyes when he found out this was the instruction given to him. At this point, he never knew that. He never knew of the intention. He never knew that God was going to stop him just before. However, he was just going to follow through with an instruction, right? This links in perfectly with our point before about emotional courage. If you can continue reading verse 4.
Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the us, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together.
So, imagine,
Isaac's probably thinking, why has my dad got all of this offering stuff?
Exactly.
Like, there's no animal.
Exactly.
It's just me.
Exactly. I can't. It's true, because I was saying humanize the situation as a parent's perspective, but from the child's perspective, I can't imagine what he was thinking, Isaac. Like, where is everything? Like, for example, you, right? If God told you to get up in the morning and go and sacrifice your son, how are you going to react to this?
It would be very hard. Like, considering it would just be very hard on anyone. Like, the thoughts that would be going through your head.
It's true.
Like, that's my child. Like, that's my only child. At that time, it was his only child.
Very
right?
good point, because God mentions sacrifice your only son.
Your only son.
His only son,
and
right?
Abraham was quite old, right?
Yeah.
So it would it's a big thing.
Although he did have Ishmael, but this was the son in which God was gonna put Abraham lineage down, right? Or put his lineage down, right? So from a parent's perspective, it's very interesting, because even me, I'm not a parent, but I know, or I can sympathize with how you feel, and I know from, because obviously I have parents, and the connection I have with my parents, it would kill me to know that my parents are about to sacrifice me, and I know for a fact my parents, or at least I'd like to hope, my parents would cry and cry because God had just told them to do something like this, right? I think it's easy to say, especially in today's day and age, I think it's easy to say we would do it, and that's because we have this as an example as to what could happen. Abraham never had this as an example. He couldn't look back in a book the same way we are doing so now and say, well, surely this is not going to happen. No, Abraham just followed instruction with a pure heart and done what he was told to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I would say it's much easier said than done. If it was so easy as to say, yes, I would follow through with God's instructions, because I'm not denying people would, but I know people would think about it.
Yeah.
If it was as easy as people saying, I'll do it without a doubt, there's no way we would open Genesis 22 and actually teach this as a lesson and say, we wouldn't take the key parts from me. There would be no key parts from me. It's such an easy thing to do. But no, this is, when you humanize the situation and paint the picture, you realize this is a really hard thing to even go through.
It's very difficult.
Verse 6, if you can read that again for me, please.
And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?
Do you now see what I mean? The emotional courage that Abraham had. I know when we analyze this story, the amount of emotional and mental stumbling blocks he must have had to go through could have been tremendous.
Even Isaac knowing that he's about to die.
Yeah, that's sad. That's sad in itself.
And he doesn't know why he's gonna die. Like, he's just
like, let's say you were in this situation and you were going to do this, right? God told you to do it and whatnot.
Chris was asking me, Mum, like, why, like,
you're gonna cry.
There's nothing to offer up. Like why are you getting stuff for offering up if there's nothing here?
As a father, and it's a crazy situation when you know me, as I'm not a father, but I know
Even
how I can imagine how it first
even if it was for you to do that to Manasseh, you would definitely feel it's a strong bond. Like
as much
that's
as
your blood, that's your family.
As much as he annoys me, you always have a love for your family members. I love my brothers, right? If God told me get up and go and sacrifice a brother on this mountain and whatnot, I'm gonna be honest. I couldn't tell you what I would do. I generally couldn't. It'd be easy for me to say yes, I'd do it.
But when it comes down to it,
yeah, exactly. And we have this scripture to then turn around and say, well, this is probably a test, but Abraham never had this before. Yeah. Abraham was a Hebrew. He was the first Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
He never had any forefathers the same way Moses and Jesus and these people all had to look upon and say, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Abraham was the first of his kind, right? He was the first man to be known as a Hebrew unto God, right? So all these things you have to consider them when describing the situation, right? So I can imagine if my child looked upon me and said, "Dad, where's the lamb?" I'm saying we've got the fire, we've got the knife. Where's the lamb? I would break down right there and then. I know that for a fact I'd break down. Any parent that says they wouldn't break down, heartless. I'm pretty sure either they're heartless or they're lying. But I know for a fact I would break down right there and then. But that's how emotionally confident and emotionally courageous our father Abraham was, right? If you could go from verse 8.
And Abraham said, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering." So they went both of them together.
So you didn't actually tell him there and then, you're going to be that sacrificial lamb at the point. Isaac was still curious. He still had these thoughts running in his mind. He didn't know what was going on. He hadn't had it confirmed yet, right?
Yeah. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood.
Right. So everything's set the scene now. Everything's being put together. These moments before going to do that act, obviously.
And now his son knows that he's the offering.
Exactly. So not only are you crying, now your son's crying, and it just makes the situation 10 times worse, right? Okay, verse 10, I believe.
And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son.
So this is the reason why his courage was so tremendous, right? He had every intention. Yes, he didn't want to do it because of his emotional attachment with his son, and yes, he didn't want to kill his own son. But the courage he had, the emotional courage he had, in order for him to go along with what God has instructed him to do, is the reason why we look upon his story and say, this was a great story, because I can imagine the God of Israel in the heavens looking at this story and saying, tick, that's it. He's done exactly what I said he's going to do. He's looking down with a smile on his face because he knows the integrity that this man has. And all of these characteristics that God never knew at this point that Abraham had was all shown through his emotional courage, right? Verse 11, please.
And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me.
There we go. So we knew it was a test. Abraham never knew it was a test. His intentions were to do it. It was obviously hard, but he went through with it, right?
And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen.
Thank you very much. So, as stated, this scripture is a prime, and I know I've used that word prime a lot of times, but there's so many key examples of courage shown in the Bible, right? For example, we touched on it, Queen Esther. Tremendous courage. She had to go against her appointment of being Queen Esther just to save her people, right? Even if I'm gone.
She put herself in a position that could have killed her to save her people, to give her people the chance to escape being slaughtered, like without knowing. You know, that's a big act of courage.
It's true.
Like not a lot of people might have done that.
It's true. I think a key point to mention is, we've seen all these Israelites that have courage in the Bible, have shown us courage in the Bible, but you get those that probably lack courage. And we had this discussion before the recording about whether Jonah actually showed a lack of courage. And my argument was he did. If you read the first 3 verses of Jonah chapter 1, you see that he fled from the God of Israel's instruction. Yes, it doesn't say why he fled. He could have fled because he didn't want to do the job. He could have fled because he was, any reason. But if you could also argue that he fled because he feared what he was going to be seen as, right? And I think if that is the case, that's something that we need to definitely not take from. And what I mean by that is having courage is being able to go against the grain. We're Israelites, right? We're not going to fit in. We literally don't make up 0.1% of the world. We don't make that up. So we're not going to fit in. Everywhere we go, every single room we're in, we're the shining light and we're the difference, right? To show courage is to go against what other people believe, to stand your ground. And thank God, what we believe in is the truth. Because anybody can have courage.
Anyone can have
but courage. They can argue that their points are true, but we know they're not. For another example, just to relate it back to home, my mother showed tremendous courage. If those that know my mother, that know her situation, about how she was grown up as a Muslim, or she grew up in the religion of Islam, and she had to leave what she knew in order to worship this God. And that's something that you can definitely look up to.
That's a big thing.
We had this discussion
literally on the way here.
Yeah.
And it's just that everyone knows that a lot of people from Muslim backgrounds, once you turn away from your family, you're basically abandoned. No one wants anything to do with you. And I know that because I have so many friends that are in situations like that.
I think basically what we would say is the moral of our story, or the moral of our lessons is to always have good courage. As I said before, Joshua chapter 1, Deuteronomy chapter 31, somewhere in Proverbs as well, you will always see the God of Israel saying, have good courage, have good courage. And just before you display your courage, always magnify the God of Israel. Don't think pessimistically, always think optimistically. If you turn around and say, I'm not going to do something, that's not going to work. You have to have courage in order to be a part of the God of Israel, right? I mean, to be a part of the God of Israel, to be a child of the God of Israel, right? And to go back to your point, all my brethren that, for example, our elder Shadrach, when he was given a sign about, reestablishing this tradition for us, we can say, or we definitely will say, that he had massive amount of courage before that. As a grown adult, and it's easy for us to say, you don't need courage to be a part of this truth, because we were born and we grew up in this nation, thank God.
Yeah, we even said on the way here that for people coming into this, when you're coming into this nation and you learn the truth, it takes a lot of courage to actually go and get baptized, because now that you know the truth, it can actually scare you to want to go away, if that makes any sense. It's a lot to take in. So you need the courage to what I'm trying to say.
For example, let's say next year, let's say somebody came into the nation and they were 35 years old, they've been in the Christian church for how many years? I will 100% respect the courage that they have if they were to convert to the truth. And the reason why I say that is because they've grown up in their traditions and everything for how long? And to do that and to come into this fold is tremendous courage. And it's because they've known what they've known for how long? They've known that for 35 years, let's say, in this example. And if that is the case, then it definitely will be, it's definitely a great sign of courage, right? That would be considered mental courage or spiritual courage. That's definitely spiritual courage, right? Even the story of Esther, you say she had courage. Jonah, you can say lacked courage. You can even say Asa lacked courage if you want. There's an argument there where the seer Hananiah had even told Asa, the God of Israel has done this for us for how many years? He's
helped you on several occasions.
How many battles have there been where the God of Israel has delivered us out of the enemy's hand? You want to call upon another king to help you get physical numbers?
And the God of Israel says, put not your trust in men.
Yeah, you don't need it.
Put your trust in the God of Israel.
Yeah, you definitely don't need it. Even Moses, right? everybody that knows the story of Moses will know that there's tremendous and there's loads of there's never going to be a deficit of courage. First count of courage you can say when he slew that Egyptian for the way he was treating that Israelite. He grew up under the household of Pharaoh, and he just he just killed one of his soldiers because of the way he treated an Israelite.
Yeah.
There's many examples in Pharaoh when he had to take on the burden of, or not burden, what do you call it? The job. He had to take on the job of expressing to the children of Israel the truth and saying to them, I am the one that's going to take you out of the land of Egypt.
Even telling Pharaoh to let his people go.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Pharaoh's probably thinking, I've raised you. I'm basically your dad.
Yeah.
Like and you want me to let these people go? I've given you luxuries. I've raised you like my son. Yeah. And now you're going against me. It's a big thing. It's a big thing to do. That's like even taking Pharaoh out of the equation. Imagine speaking back to your parent and telling your parent like going against your parents' wishes or something like that. Like it's a big thing. And
definitely.
And I feel like you can relate that to Moses and Pharaoh in regards to how he grew up. Yeah,
definitely. I think with Moses, as I said, there's many different examples, and even when the God of Israel hardened Pharaoh's heart, and at that point in time, you could probably think that Moses probably would have lost, he would have lost hope. Hope. He would have definitely had a decrease in courage.
And you know what?
But the God of Israel brought that back up for him, and he done what he done.
Moses is probably even thinking like, I'm already doubting myself. And now you're hardening Pharaoh's heart. You're kind of making this hard for me, God of Israel.
But as I said before, all of this is a part of the plan.
It's all part of the plan. Yeah.
That
he puts us in trialing situations so he can take us out of them.
He done it with Moses. He's done it with loads. He even done it with Job. An aspect of courage we looked at was mental, and a definition of courage is to go through go through pain and grief. We'll be able to go through pain and grief, and that's exactly what he done. He had everything taken away from him. He had his family, his children taken away from him. He had his own wife telling him to curse God and die, and all of that backfired because if you read later on, you'll see how wealthy he became after because he refused to do what Satan told him to do. He refused to fall into that trap of cursing God, and that shows tremendous encouragement. I mean, it's encouragement, tremendous courage, right?
I just think there's so many times that we can relate courage back to our everyday lives and what happens to us. Like in regards to myself, I would say that growing up, I've been in Israel since I was 2 years old, and I've learned about Israel for the whole of my life, let's say. Obviously, growing up back then, I would say that the nation was more stricter. I don't know if Levi can relate, but me and James, we know it was quite strict. And I think like sometimes it did cause me to stray. And I think me straying, it was kind of hard because
it's brought you back and you realised.
It's brought me back. And even some decisions that I've made, it does take courage for me to come back because I could have just walked away. Like I could have just been like, you know what, I've messed up now. Like no one's gonna take me back. Like I've done wrong. Like why are they gonna accept me again? Yeah. But it took courage for me to come back. And now look at me here. I'm teaching a lesson. I'm part of Rise. I wouldn't have seen myself sitting here doing this right now. Like even the beginning of us even starting this lesson, it was kind of scary. But I know that we've been put here to teach God's word, 100%. And that's what I'm gonna do. Like I'm grateful that I've had the situations in the past because that's what it's brought me to where I am now.
I think definitely. Even relating back to what you said, courage is probably you gain courage based off past situations, and that's exactly where you got it.
And I think we wrapping up or
I'd like to.
I think we'd like to thank Elder Kirk
definitely
for pushing Rise,
definitely,
for making us know our worth because having Rise now in this day and age is very crucial. Definitely. Like Rise is definitely keeping us all bonded. We're getting to know people abroad. Like we're being more as a family. And I feel like that's very important now.
Definitely. Big up Elder Shadrach as well because he was the creator of, or the one that established this group. He done this in order to build leaders, right? And one key thing, if there's one thing that you know that every leader has, it's definitely courage. Definitely courage. And I wish I'd have done all of this in order to He done all of this in order for us to build courage.
Yeah.
We don't need to shy away when bringing up our God. We don't need to shy away when it comes to anything, because we are Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
We are children of the Most High.
If it wasn't for Elder Shadrach, we wouldn't know about this doctrine over here in the UK. And we're very grateful for all of that, and we're very grateful for our leadership, for teaching us and pushing us and making us cry when we was teaching. We're very grateful.
It's brought us where we are today.
It's brought us to where we are today. I remember Levi used to cry all the time, but anyway.
Yeah, so thank you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. We hope you took the moral of our message away from us, and we hope that you are edified in what we spoke. Yeah. Once again, thank you, Elder Shadrach, for this truth, for bringing us this doctrine and reestablishing this tradition amongst us as a people that was lost many years ago. And I'm so thankful for the fact that I know this truth and that I know my God, and I actually have something to have faith and courage in, because there's loads of people outside that don't have anything. So thank you guys. You've just heard from the UK.
We just want to say one more thing, that Purim is coming up, and we would love for everyone to be united. Like, we want everyone to be posting stuff about Purim. We want everyone to be uplifting.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, we're coming out of the dark months. We want to be rejoicing. Like, we want to be happy. We want to see everyone's pictures of Purim.
The other side do it with their Christmas.
Exactly. So we need to show us that. We need to be above.
So wrapping this up, thank you guys for listening in. Make sure you hit the like, comment and subscribe button. Throw up your fires, your thumbs up, your rise up, all of the good stuff.
Rise up.
Do all the good stuff, and we hope you were edified and you got something from everything that we spoke about. And with that, we'd like to say peace.
Peace.